Hello, beautiful, and welcome to the Mom Talk Sex podcast with me, Mor Yelvington, your host. I'm so excited and honored that you're here today, and I am very excited for this juicy conversation with the beautiful Bridget. Hey, Bridget.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on. I'm so excited for this interview and for you to, share with us your story and your journey. So, how about we start with you introducing who you are and what it is that you do in the world?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks so much for your platform because I think this is a really important topic. So I got into the personal growth space in 2019 when I chose sobriety for my life, and I didn't need rehab or AA or anything like that. I was a mom at home on a quest to feel good, and that was the only tool I had in my tool belt. And what I've realized now is alcohol was my thing, but everyone has their thing. And so I found coaching, and coaching immediately helped me shift my thoughts. I had this line that it wasn't my drinking, it was my thinking, it was the way I saw the world. And so I immediately saw shifts and I had to share this. So I jumped into becoming certified as a coach. And it was amazing until I bumped up against my own trauma, which really did show up in my marriage. It was actually more of a sisterhood wound, more of a I'm not chosen. And I didn't realize how much that was impacting so much of my relationship with my husband. But the only mindset work didn't work. So I found body work, I found somatics, I found learning how to reconnect to my body and learning how to actually feel good again. So it was the first time in my sobriety journey I actually was feeling better. Before I knew, I knew I had a certain level of awareness now in my mind, but I still wasn't quite feeling better. So once I started incorporating these tools, everything shifted. So today I am a feminine embodiment coach and a speaker and a breathwork facilitator, and I help women get out of their heads so that they can really connect back to their heart and create a life that wildly turns them on. So the name of my business moved from Think and Thrive, really focused on mindset to it's now called Find Her Wild Coaching. And it's all about just helping women strip the should, strip the labels, and create a life that lights them up again.
I love that so much. So, I'm curious, what striked you? What was your moment like of the turning point where you were like, okay, I can't do this anymore. I need help. This is not working for me.
Yeah. In relation to alcohol or in relation to,
I think, yeah, like when did you realize when did you choose to start your healing journey, right? I feel like so
yeah,
many women are dealing with so much, but they think it's normal. They think,
yeah,
oh, another glass of wine. Oh, I'm a mom, so I'm tired all the time. I don't have energy. I don't want to have sex. That's just normal.
right,
All mom.
right.
When does it become, okay, this is not okay for me anymore?
Yeah, no, I love that question. I mean, truly, I had tried everything to stop drinking. It wasn't, I have four kids. My youngest was 3.5 when I finally put down the bottle. Um, so, and my oldest at that time was 12, 14. So we're talking 14, 15 years of that was how I did motherhood. And I agree with you. My justification for drinking at night, during the witching hour was really like motherhood is hard. And this is the only thing that helps me feel better. And to be honest, it worked. It worked until it didn't work. And so at the time, I thought once I got sober, everything would get better. But that is not what happened. Once I got sober, the real work happened. And I realized, oh my gosh, the reason I was drinking was because of how highly sensitive I am. Because what people feel, when people feel, for example, my husband, when he feels rejection, it might feel like a pin in his heart. For me, it feels like 30 pins. And I couldn't quite move past it. So it was probably about 2 years into sobriety when I ended up drinking again. And I ended up drinking again. And that was a really scary moment for me where I recognized it's more I've got to figure out I've got to connect to the body because the body is where I'm actually going to feel better. I can't think myself into feeling better anymore. And that was when I found somatics, and that is when I no longer count my sobriety days. I no longer identify, with like I'm happy to share this story, but it's not something I lead with. It's really just part of who I am. But I guess to answer your question, I always say sobriety gave me the key. Coaching helped me really truly unlock it. And yeah, it was, yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of, there's so much to share. And I'm sort of like, what I love about what you just said is that people think it's normal, We think it's normal. And that was my story for such a long time, because also that was who I communicated with. Anyone and everyone. My friends at the time we would spend hours just venting about our life and complaining. And then we would all go reach for something, right? Right. Whether it was food, scrolling, shopping, spending money, whatever it is. And I knew in my heart of hearts that there was more. I didn't know how to get there. So stopping drinking was the first step.
I love that so much. And so what does that look like now when you hang out with your friends? Right? Like now that you're
Well,
not reaching for the bottle, not reaching for food, what is that, right?
yeah. Well, I have a whole new group of friends. And honestly, it's a lot more ownership. It's a lot more responsibility for where I'm at. Instead of not being able to communicate, like my feelings are hurt or I'm having a hard day. I have 100 million tools now in my tool belt that every day is different. I reach for a different tool every time, but each time it's literally helping me feel better instead of what alcohol was doing, which was just pushing it all down, kind of like a beach ball. And eventually it resurfaced. So yeah, a lot of my relationships have honestly changed, which I'm super grateful for. The relationships that have remained the same, and especially like in early sobriety, um, it was something I didn't tell people for the first month, out of a lot of shame. And then what I realized very quickly at about 3 months when I started sharing my story, everyone could relate, even if alcohol wasn't their thing. Everyone had something, and it opened the door for so many opportunities for me to connect with new people, to support them. Yeah, but it really was sobriety really was the first step. And looking back, to be honest, it was the easier step. Like it wasn't easy at the time, but it really was the easiest of my journey, if that makes sense.
So what would you say the hard part was, the journey?
Getting back into my body. I didn't know what that meant when the first time a coach said to me, like, I remember feeling so triggered within friendships. And I was bringing that back into my marriage all the time. This identity that I had literally in the issues in the tissues. It was this identity of I'm not chosen. Every time somebody said something, did something, didn't say something, didn't do something, didn't show up for me in the way I wanted, this identity, like it was all over my body. And so when my coach first told me you've got to learn to get in the body, I was like, what are you talking about? I'm in my body. But it's so funny, like the topic we're talking about, because learning to get into my body was the catalyst for me enjoying sex again and pleasure in my life and true self-care, right? Like not like numbing self-care. So yeah, it was a slow, I think somatic work and learning to connect to your body is very subtle. It's not like I saw those immediate shifts like I did with mindset work, but it's much longer lasting. Like now when I get triggered, I know what to do. I'm not afraid to be in certain situations. I'm not afraid to bring up certain conversations or things with my husband or friends, because I recognize that I think it's Michael Singer in the book Untethered. He writes like everything we avoid and everything we're moving towards, it's a feeling. So when you start to get really good at feeling, like you really do become sort of unstoppable.
Right. I'm interested when you just mentioned like real self-care or numbing self-care. What do you
Yeah.
mean when you say that?
Yeah. I think, I mean, wine with my girlfriends on the porch, venting about our husbands, that was self-care for me for the majority of my motherhood. Being around other women that validated my story was self-care. Real self-care is getting out of the story and getting really in touch with the body, the sensations, and learning to sort of move through that, whether it's sacred rage rituals, right? Like screaming, dancing has become a huge part of my tool belt. Um, yeah, so self-care to me is it truly, if there is something you're doing that might momentarily help like your body, but it doesn't help your mind and your spirit, that's not true self-care. True self-care is going to impact in a positive way all three, your body, mind, and spirit. And it doesn't have to be glamorous. It could literally be walking outside barefoot or laying on a blanket and doing nothing for 5 minutes. So yeah, I mean, when I started to really understand what self-care was, I recognized it has to involve the body. That's the first part. And it has to positively impact all parts of my being. Otherwise, it's just another form of, yeah, like numbing.
I love that. And you were also mentioning how you would bring your trauma into your relationship. Can you maybe touch a little bit about what that looks like when you're bringing something like that into the relationship, into the bedroom? Like, what
Yeah.
kind of conflict does that create, or what does that even look like?
So, yeah, so I'll answer it in two parts because I think we all, and I know a lot of people are waking up to what is trauma. But in my example, if anyone can relate, I didn't have big T trauma. It was what is considered little T trauma, but it still has a very big impact. And so there were two ways that it really showed up in my relationship. The first one was I believed from a really young girl that I wasn't chosen. In a family of four, in a large Irish Catholic family, like that was the identity I took on, and that was my perception, and that showed up in friendships. And so, like tangibly speaking, if I would go out and have a hard interaction with a friend, or I would get rejected by somebody, or feel left out, I didn't know how to take responsibility for that and own it. But I also didn't know how to share that with my husband. So instead, he would come home. I'm feeling so much shame, right? And so he would come home, and my only way to say, like, I'm really struggling, I'm hurt, I'm sad, I'm feeling insecure, was to blame, was to basically make him feel as not enough as I was feeling in the moment. And he took it literally, right? He didn't have the tools either to be able to look past that. So it was this constant dance where eventually he would be like, "What happened earlier in the day? Like, who were you hanging out with?" Right? He started to kind of put things together that, like, this cannot be because the shoes are not put away, right? Or like, we'd be flirting in the morning with like flirty texts, and then something would happen. And by the time he comes home, I'm a totally different person. And I didn't have the awareness, my own self-awareness. I also didn't have the safety inside of my body to be able to share that with him. So that was like outside of the bedroom, how that showed up in my relationship. And then I would say inside the bedroom, that definitely played a role, not feeling chosen. Actually, the way that that showed up was anytime he would really sort of like make a pass at me, my initial thought was, "What do you want?" It was very like transactional. It was like, oh my God, like he would plan a whole date for me. And my thought was, he's just trying to get in my pants, right? Like I just couldn't let it go. I couldn't actually believe that he was choosing me and wanting to connect with me. And so that absolutely, it became like my weapon to sort of withhold sex in the relationship as like, in order to not feel not chosen with you, I'm going to just not choose you.
Yeah.
That's going to be kind of how I'm going to show up there. And then I would say the other part of that answer is I grew up in an Irish Catholic family, and so there was a lot of shame in, like, in the bedroom, certain things feeling good and me feeling like this is dirty, this is wrong, and not being him feeling bad bringing his own needs and desires to the bedroom as well. And so that actually has shifted a lot as the more I've been more open about, this isn't you. It's not something you're doing. It's not that I don't connect with you. It's that I have this wounding of I'm not chosen. And it's also like intertwined with so much shame, just from growing up in the church and all that good stuff. And so as I started to kind of unravel that and be a lot more open of things that I truly desired, things that felt good, and just open communication, he did the same. And so it's been this really newfound place where we're at, where first of all, yeah, I mean, I wish to God I knew this when my kids were younger, because yes, my kids are older. I'm getting full night's sleep, right? Like that's the first place. Like, are your physical needs actually being met? But even if I could go back with like toddlers, if I knew what I knew now, I know things would be different. Um, yeah, I
That's
could,
so true. I second that so much.
yeah,
You know, and we were talking about this earlier. Like, I feel like a lot of the times what we don't realize is that what we experience is quote unquote considered trauma, right?
yeah,
And so we don't categorize it. We feel like it's normal. We feel like it's okay. I haven't experienced something like really traumatic. So I don't
yeah,
have a reason to act like that or like this. I don't have a reason to be like this. But what I realized working with my clients for over 18 years is like you're just not aware of what you're going through until it
yeah,
hits the point of, kind of like no return. Like I can't go back to how things are going. And
yeah,
when you talk about being in the body, so many times when we experience this kind of trauma, we just disconnect. Like you said, we disconnect from our body. So it doesn't matter how much we talk about it, and I feel like that's why so many times just the coaching part or going to a psychologist, right? Just talking about it doesn't really create a difference because we're not really in the body. It's not until we heal the body and release that experience that we can now be in a safe place where we feel connected. and
Yeah.
empowered to actually feel again. So I feel like it's amazing that you're sharing this because it's so powerful.
Yeah.
And what is, now that you're in your body, what does that look like? What does that feel like versus everything you went through?
Yeah. So when you talk about awareness, when we are aware of just our thoughts, which again is where I started, I like to think of it like it is important. Mindset work absolutely works, and it is a big piece of the puzzle. But it's back to that, like it's 20% of the puzzle,
Right.
right? 20% of those, the thoughts in our mind are affecting our emotional experience. But 80% of what we're thinking is actually a result of the state of our body. So yes, our thoughts cause our feelings, but what creates your thoughts? The state of your body, the state of your being, the state of your nervous system. So getting into my body looks as minute as 10 minutes every morning in silence. I have 4 kids. I am busy, just like most of the women I'm sure listening to your podcast. I don't have the time to sit for 20 minutes like a monk and meditate. Like that's just not, usually I have a kid in the room or a dog, but I'm learning in the middle of the chaos. Can I just tune in to, so yeah, there's 3 things that I like to do. It's in the morning, I sit for 5 to 10 minutes of silence. Again, I usually have it's not actually silent, but I am not doing anything. I'm not on my phone. It's the first thing I do. I get up, I drink my apple cider vinegar water, and then I go and sit. And then at some point during the day, I'm doing a mindfulness practice. And that might be while I'm doing dishes, right? Like while I'm doing the dishes, can I look at the water? Can I feel the water on my hands? Can I smell the soap? Can I experience the lather? Can I feel the sensations in my hand as I'm touching them? Does one hand feel better? What's the temperature, right? All of that. When I work with moms, sometimes I'll even say, when you're nursing your baby, meditate.
Yeah.
Get off of your phone and be there with your baby. Like look at smell their skin, touch their skin. These are all subtle tools, right? So that's 2. The third one I always do, and I have my clients do, is set your alarm. Set your alarm for like an afternoon where you typically lose your shit, the time of day. So for me, it's usually like when my kids get home because we're just busy and it's non-go. And the alarm is labeled, how do you feel? And it's just this reminder in the afternoon to pause and tune in. And again, when I say subtle, it's not like I do that and I feel amazing, right? Like after you work out, it's not like I feel like my heart is whatever. You know what I'm saying? It's not like I feel like completely energized or anything. What it has done in the long term is I am able to catch myself at like a level 2 when I'm starting to get overwhelmed or when I'm nearing, close to my cycle. Like I can pick up on these tunes, these sensations and the wisdom that my body is sending me way earlier. So it's not about meditation, all of these somatic tools, learning to get in your body. It's not about if I do that, I'm going to feel calm all the time. No, like we need stress. Stress is actually a good thing for our nervous system. It's a good thing for our body. But can I recognize it and can I bring myself back down? Because the more that I do that, the more safety that I'm creating, the bigger my window of tolerance is. And the more ability I have to actually communicate to my husband what's going on. When I'm at a level 10, like all bets are off. I just can't communicate. I don't even know what I need in the moment, much less be able to tell him what I need. So those 3 very simple practices that I do every single day, I think have really allowed me to train myself to slow down, but also be back in relationship with my body. What does it feel like when I'm anxious? Because my anxiety is not going to feel the same as yours, right? So what does it actually mean for me when I'm overwhelmed or anxious? What does it mean for me when I'm turned on? Like, I don't even know. I didn't even know until I started doing this work. So yeah, that's just a little bit I hope that answered your question, but
Yeah, I love this so much because I feel like it definitely gives the tools for women listening to actually start playing with these kind of tools and play with them and see what shows up for them. So I really
yeah,
love it.
yeah.
So if anybody of our listeners wants to find you or know more about you, where can they do that?
Yeah, thanks so much for asking. So I usually am on Instagram at Find Her Wild Coaching. And then I have a podcast. My podcast is called Wake Up and Thrive. And we take everyday moments, just like we're talking about, and use a lot of somatic tools to wake up, to have a broader, deeper awareness around what's actually going on. And then I lead groups and events. So I have retreats, events, group coaching programs online that you can join. And then the last thing that's a really cool really cool experience for anyone listening. It's only $27 to join. I host a monthly virtual breathwork class, and every month is a different theme. And this is not your typical slow pranayama yoga. Like, this is a journey. This is an incredible way to bypass the thoughts, bypass the mind, and actually get into the body and release things that need to be released so that you can have the space to have more awareness within your body. Because I think oftentimes we're just so bogged down with junk. So if you go on Instagram, you can get a hold of everything there. Check out my podcast, come join a monthly breathwork. And come say hi.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for being here. This was so enlightening and connecting.
Yeah.
And very inspirational. So thank you for being here and sharing your journey with us and all your tools and wisdom. I really appreciate you taking the time and coming to play with me.
Thank you.
And thank you guys for tuning in and listening. I hope you have a beautiful day. If you have any questions, just write them in the comments and we'll respond. And thank you for listening. Have a wonderful rest of your day.